Let's see, is there a thing working here? Let's find out. Is it stream working? There we go. Ah, there we go. Sorry about that, everyone. Having just a connection issue there. Welcome to another masterclass session. Today we're going to be making battle maps with the fantasy regional style. I've been looking forward to this stream. I really personally enjoy fantasy regional style. It's a lot of fun. The more traditional battle maps being orthographic, they don't have any kind of perspective to it, and those are obviously far more functional as an encounter map, but they don't have the same kind of depth and the kind of like the beauty that I find that like something with a fantasy regional style where it has some perspective to it. Now, this is of course a totally a personal preference. Some people prefer fantasy regional over fantasy world or fantasy battle maps. So this is all personal preference. I personally am really looking forward to this stream. So what we'll be making by random dope or pretty awesome dope. It looks dope. Thank you, Abel. By the way, Espada and Adam. Good. Glad that you're both here. So what I went ahead and did a poll on YouTube, and it looks like overwhelmingly people voted for to make a mountain terrain. So we'll be making a map not too dissimilar from the one you see here on the screen. We'll probably make it a little bit different. I don't want to copy this one exactly. If you do like this map and you want to use it for your own campaign, feel free to clone and edit it. It's on my profile. I believe it's called Mountain Ruins. Feel free to use that for personal use. So let's go ahead and jump right in. First, we're going to create a new map. We're going to use the fantasy regional style. Now, when we get to your editing resolution, I'm going to do my 4K. I have a strong machine, but if you don't have a very powerful machine, you might want to consider editing in 3K or 2K. That's up to you. When it comes to aspect ratio, this to me is determined on a couple things. The first one is, are you printing this map out for a live session with your crew, or are you doing this on a VTT? If you're doing it for print, then I don't recommend stepping too far away from like landscape or portrait aspect ratios, as they are easier to print on your regular A1 printer paper, unless you go to like a print shop or you own like a plotter where you can kind of have custom sizes. So if you were doing print, landscape, portrait, if you're doing a VTT, then it really doesn't matter about the aspect ratio. But I'm going to assume, for me, I'm going to make this VTT, and I'm going to make a custom one myself. And I'm going to go with this more vertical orientation. So I'll do 40 columns by 80 rows. So that's going to be very vertical. It's going to be bigger, longer than like a portrait. And there's another reason why I like these more longer vertical aspect ratios is because when it comes to encounter maps, I like to have my players start from A and then they go to the next point B. That verticality, this kind of aspect ratio, allows you to create some distance, and then you'll be able to easily create a map with this particular aspect ratio. Again, it's more aimed towards VTT than it is for print, okay? So I'm gonna go with the 40 by 80, which would be 1:2 aspect ratio. So I'll create that map. I'm gonna let that load, and then we'll kind of go over how I do the layout of a map. First, what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and fill the entire canvas with the add mode of the mask tool. So if I just go to the mask tool and just click fill all, it will fill it with the add mode of the mask tool. That's step one. The next step, what I'll do is I like to create a path that leads to an endpoint, so where your players can go. Players don't like backtracking. So we definitely want to create a clear path from A to B, the beginning of the path, and at the end of the path, there's going to be some kind of final confrontation with maybe some kind of epic encounter that will be there. So we'll have to pick something at the end of our route, on this mountain route, in which an encounter will take place. It could be ruins, it might be a camp of some kind, maybe it's a giant's lair or a griffin's lair. It doesn't really matter. So we'll get to that in a little bit later. First, we'll go ahead and create the path that leads to it. So what I'll end up doing is I'll use the line tool right here. I'm going to make it just a solid line with no shadow, and I'll make it nice and thick so I can see it really well. Usually I'll go like this to kind of see what it looks like. And then what I'll do is I'm going to create like these meanders, like a river with the path that kind of goes like this. And then it will lead into some kind of center point right here. I don't really like the way that I did the curve, so let's do it like this. There we go. And then this will be where our encounter will take place. And there's a reason why I do these little S curves here, and that is because I want to be able to create some background in those negative spaces. Your players probably aren't going to deviate outside of the path. They can, of course, but these negative spaces, and when I say negative space, what I really mean is these spaces right here, because there's not going to be the path there. The negative space is where your players probably won't be traversing, though they can, of course. So these spaces right here are called negative space, just so you know, just so you have some reference there. And then what I'll do from here is I'll go ahead and just kind of group this little sketch together. I'll create a group and just call it a sketch, which I will end up deleting later. The beautiful thing about a sketch is it doesn't have to be some intense drawing. If you're not an artist and you're not very good at sketch work, it doesn't matter. The point is just to have you some kind of guide for you to work around. I'm going to bring it to the lowest layer like this, and I think I'll just lock it so I don't accidentally select it. And then now what I'll have to do is choose a mountain, a mesa, or a hill, or whatever it is that I want. Since it's a mountain terrain, I'll probably choose a mountain. And I should also pick a theme. And there's a lot of different ways that I can pick a theme. Like maybe it's an undead mountain where there's a lot of undead creatures lurking on the road. Then maybe I want to choose like an intimidating, scary, kind of unnatural rock formation for my mountains. Or maybe it's just a regular mountain that leads to a thieves fort. Then I don't want to have anything crazy other than just having some mountains and then maybe some trees and bushes. If it's a dwarven type of theme, then maybe I want to put some dwarven stamps mixed in with the mountains, right? So we have to pick a theme. I personally like undead. I think that's kind of a nice theme, so we'll go with that. And what we should do is just go into the catalog and type in mountain, and all the various mountains pop up. And I think this one right here, these dark mountains, fits well with that theme. So what I'll do is I'll scale up like this. Now, the secret when you're placing down these stamps is you do not want a stamp to cover the road. See how this stamp right here covers that road? Then you might want to consider not adding a mountain there, or go ahead and grabbing these hotbars and then bringing it down like this. So that way it doesn't block too much. Or you can go with another option, which is just make sure that it bleeds off to the side. So for instance, if I go ahead and bring the transform back to normal like this, I can just go like this until I find a piece where it fits just on the side like that, so it doesn't hide the road. And the reason why you don't want to hide the road is because that's where your players' movements are. This is a common concept in video game design as well, where you're trying to create this sense of depth, but not blocking your players' movement. So I'm going to move this over to here to where the path is available, and then I'll place another one right here in the side. And what I can do is just try to find one where it's not popping up too much. So I can go another piece right here like this. And if I want to, I can just transform it like that. And then this way it doesn't get in the way of the path too much. I can put it right there. Or I can just scale it down real small and just kind of fit it in like this. This is up to you and how you want to go about doing it. But you want to fit those mountains just in here to where there's room for players to move around. So I'll go ahead and place that clip there. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to fill every single one of these areas with cliffs. And I'm just going to move my way up. So I'll start with this one first. Another one here, here. Let's go with this one here, here. That looks a little too much. I don't want to like block that. Let's put it right about there. That should be enough right about there. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm starting to frame the path. That's basically what it is. I'm taking these mountains and I'm framing them. What these mountains represent are the tops of mountains. You are up in the mountains, and all of these are like these peaks that you're traveling around to get to that encounter at the top. So I'll go ahead and place much more like here, like this. Just place a bunch. Make sure that I don't accidentally block. So I'll put some there, there. Let's also put some here. And then here, I'll want to, again, I'm going to frame. And then what I might do is I want to create like a summit of some kind. So I won't put mountains back here like this to frame this. Instead, what I'll do is I'll create maybe like a scene in the background using the fantasy world style to kind of show like there's some depth in the background. So I might consider doing that. So let's maybe move that right to there. Let's move this piece to right here. Okay, that looks good. I might want to add a couple more right here just to kind of close that off, because you don't want to have these open spaces to the sides, because then your player could just move off to the side. So having something there is kind of helpful. Now that I have that worked out, I can go ahead and start removing, I'll start removing the that little sketch there. I don't need that anymore. So let's remove the catch. I forgot to add an S in there, my mistake. So you see the path that's there. What I'll do now is pick a texture that kind of matches a little bit with those dark mountains that I have there. So I'll go into the catalog here. I'll go in here and kind of look for a texture that might work well. I can kind of use this one right here might work well because it's got some artifacts in it. Let's desaturate it and then maybe bring the brightness down and then maybe bump up the contrast so that it really matches with that texture. Let me bring the brightness up a little bit. What we'll do is I'll go to fill and just see how it is. Yeah, that's a little too dark. Let's bring the brightness back up. Let's bring the saturation all the way down. Let's change the scale a little bit. There we go, fill. That looks fairly good. I would say making it, let's maybe change, saturate and get a little bit of blue color in it. Because one thing I'm noticing about these mountains is that there's a little bit of blue in there. So if I kind of move out until I find this blue here, then I can bring that saturation down a little bit and then we can fill it. And that somewhat matches a little bit better with these undead or these kind of dead mountains right here. That looks good. Then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and go with the subtract mode of the mask tool, and I'm going to go ahead and erase some part right here to kind of create this horizon. So this is going to be like the edge of a cliff right here that kind of looks out over the horizon. I'll turn off those mask effects too. Those aren't going to work. So we'll go like this. Go. That looks good. And let's turn off those mask effects. You should generally turn them off when you first start because they can kind of cause a little bit of lag, but I'll just turn off the enable mask effects like this. And then I'll go ahead and make sure that I just add a little bit here, a little bit here. There we go. Okay, that looks good. We're at 71 changes. I'm going to quickly save, and then we'll start putting a texture down for the road. We're going to call this mountain terrain. This map will be clonable after the stream, so I'll make sure to add that in the video description. Let this save, and then we're going to want to pick some kind of texture to kind of represent the road. And one thing that I've kind of noticed is that if you have, what helps to kind of determine what texture to use for the road and how bright or how dark it is determine on how dark the rest of your map is. Right now, these have dark mountains and kind of a dark texture as the ground texture. So using a lighter texture will cause that to pop out against the darker. So what I'll do is I'll go into the catalog here. You'll find that there's this called pavement. This will work good. I'll bring the scale up like this, make it nice and big. And then I'll also just desaturate it so where it's this more of a light gray color. Is there a way to add blur to the water? Yes, you can. There is a blur filter, but getting it to isolate will be difficult. You'd have to make the land portions with the not with the add mode of the mask tool, but with the shape tool and a shape tool fill, because the blur will affect the FG and BG layers. But you can put a shape tool fill above a blur filter. So that's the trick for using a blur on water, is just make sure the land is made with the add mode, or not with the add mode of the mask tool, sorry, but with the shape tool and a clipping mask fill. Okay. All right. So from here, I'll go ahead and apply this road texture here. I'm going to use the edgy shape. Whenever you're using the edgy shape, you want to bring the opacity down quite a bit because it doesn't have a soft edge to it. These roughness is a hard edge. I'm going to turn smooth off like this. And then what I'll do is I'll start here at the bottom and I'll just start lightly painting in a road. And now some secrets about making the road is have some sections be more opaque than others. So I could have maybe just a little bit right here and then a whole bunch right here, a little bit there, and then I'll put a whole bunch right here because maybe there'll be some kind of fort or something right here like this. There we go. So now we have that right there. And what I might want to consider doing too is make it more circular. So I'll go back in here like this, kind of get this more circular kind of feel to it. There we go. Okay. That looks a little bit better. There we go. And whenever you're texturing, it's always, and you're doing it at a lower opacity, it's always going to be a lot of brush strokes. And I mean a lot. So you want to save often. It's all right if you missed it, Makeswell. You should be able to go back. The topic is mountain terrain. We're doing battle maps with the fantasy regional style because I absolutely love the fantasy regional style. I also want to maybe place some mountains like right here on the edge like this, so that way there's some peaks on the edge. I think that would look kind of nice, and it overhangs the cliff edge. You notice how these tips of these stamps are overhanging that ledge there. So that's kind of a good thing to do. So I'll make sure to do that. Let's put maybe a smaller one here. And whenever you add larger, you can always go with larger stamps. Add some variation with some medium size and smaller ones as well. So I'll just add a little smaller one there, a smaller one there, so I can overlap, and then a smaller one there. It's always good to overlap things like that, so that way it really, really pops out, okay? There we go. Let's go ahead and add in some things onto here as well. One thing you can do if you want to make mountain stamps blend in better with the texture beneath it, a great texture in fantasy battle maps is called cracked ground. If I go into the catalog and then on the left panel, you notice a list of all the styles. If you just click fantasy battle maps, it'll open it up, and you'll notice right here, there's one called ground cracked. We're going to select that. We're going to change the texture size. And what makes this so good is it's an alpha texture, right? And so it will pick up whatever textures are beneath it when I apply it. So I'm going to bring the opacity up to 100%. And then just where the ground meets the base of the mountains, I'm going to apply this cracked ground texture. And what that will do is it will give it this illusion that it blends in better with the textures beneath it. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply this. I'm using a mouse. I'm not using a pen. There you go. And so and we're also going to put some cracked ground on the edge of the cliff as well. I think that will look good, and add the cracked ground all along wherever it meets with the ground and the stamp. So now you have this nice cracked ground. That looks nice. There we go. 22 changes, not too much. That looks good. The next step is what I'll end up doing here is now, once I've added that stuff, I'll start moving my way at the start and then moving my way up to this point here by adding details. So I'll quickly save first. And I'll show you some tricks too. If you want the mountains to pop out more, you can also add some shadows. Sometimes it's hard to tell if the mountains are all blended into one, and that can be okay, but you can also use an object shadow to make things pop out more. So a nice little trick. I'll select one stamp of the mountains, go to that hamburger menu, select, and then select all from this stamp, from this set. Let's do it again. Select all from this set. All of them should be selected. I couldn't see the selection box because I was too zoomed in. From there, I'll go over to shadow. Over here, go to custom object shadow. So far, you see a black kind of shadow that pops out. What I'll do is I'll bring the blur down and change the vertical like this. Let's bring the blur size down a little bit more. Let's bring the intensity down a little bit more. And you'll kind of notice that the mountains pop out more. Let me give you an example. When I turn the shadow off, notice how the mountains kind of blend in a little bit more. But when I go back down to custom object shadow, there's that dark shadows that kind of make those mountains pop out more. So one of the big tricks for getting a stamp to pop out is to add an object shadow. The only trick with this is that I don't want that shadow to show up underneath the stamp. I want it to show up above the stamp, because if it's down below, then it's going to make it look like it's hovering, because it looks like there's a drop shadow beneath it. So you have to change that vertical alignment when you're changing the object shadow so it pops out. Hey, first time chatter, human gamma bomb, by the way. So nice little trick. You can use shadows to make stamps pop out. I actually like those shadows. It really made that pop out more. So I'm definitely going to be keeping that. So that looks good. What we'll do here is I want to create some things here at the bottom that are going to show like the beginning of the path. For instance, one thing you can do is add like a campsite. Like maybe your players stayed the night at this camp and then they move their way up towards that final battle at the top. Super easy stuff. We'll go into the fantasy regional here and I'll type in camp so that way all the camp stuff pops out. And I'll add a nice little campfire right off to the side away from the path. Notice that the path is right here. I'm going to put it off to the side. It would look really odd if there was a campsite just in the middle of the road, right? So instead, we'll put it off to the side so that way it doesn't get in the way. It's in the shadow of the mountain here, so I'll probably just bring the brightness down a little bit, just a hair. There we go. Place that there. And then you can place a tent if you want. You can place a tent in there. Like right here, we could also face it kind of this way if you want. You can have a tent. If you don't want a tent, then you can just maybe use some logs to kind of represent sitting around the campfire there, but usually it's always good to add in some kind of beginning point. I think it might work better over here because it's closer to the beginning. Put it right up against here, and then we'll put like a little camp site right there, like that. That looks good. And what I'll also do is I'll take that stone texture and just put it, oopsie, bring the opacity down on that. That's why you always bring the opacity down when using the edgy brush. And I'll just go ahead and place this kind of nice stone right underneath here so that that way it kind of matches with that. And I think I will take a couple more of these mountain stamps and kind of place it. Let's copy paste, and we'll place it like right, oopsie, that's not that one. Let's go with this one instead. Copy paste. Let's try that one. There we go, right there. That looks better. And then one more right here just to kind of lock in. There we go. That looks good. There we go. Now we've kind of fit that in. So a campsite is a good place to start. Let's also add in some light sources. Go over to Inkarnate, and that way all the light sources will kind of pop up. Light is a great way to add depth to your map. So I'll go ahead and take this light stamp right here and just kind of place it at +5 right on top, like that. And so now I have this nice camp right here at the bottom. Perfect. And then my players move their way kind of up from the camp and then move up the path. Now, one thing, some nice things to put on the path is to add in some obstacles that get in the way, right? Let's say that your players will encounter some minor combat in the path leading up, like maybe a couple minions come down to intercept you from making it to the top where the final encounter is, right? So some good things to put in the center of the path might be some fallen pillars, a big log that maybe got in the way, maybe some plateau rocks so that your players have something to interact with, like they can jump on top of the plateau rock then jump off of it for a plunge attack, adding more damage. Or maybe they want to hide behind a plateau rock so that that way they can dodge or not be hit by enemy attacks, magic or some kind of ranged weapon. So having something on the path as obstructions or something that you can encounter with is super helpful. Hey, first time chatter, Zaddy Zeal. Yes, this is the paid version, 100%. In fact, every stream we do is with the paid version, just to let you know. Okay. And we can do some free ones, some free streams in the future if that's what people want. Okay, so remember, like I said, you want to add in some kind of obstacles, right? So there are a couple pillars that you can use in Fantasy Regional. One I like most is this one, this slender pillar. And the reason why I like this one so much is because it doesn't have a shadow, right? And that's really nice because one thing I don't care for with the Fantasy Regional styles, there's a ton of shadows baked into it. It's something I don't personally care for, but you can use these particular pillars in Fantasy Regional, or you can use pillars from Fantasy Battle Maps as well. But if you are going to use a pillar like this, I recommend desaturating it so that that way it kind of fits in, or you can choose the luminosity blend mode in which it will pick up whatever texture is underneath it, right? And so what you can do is put a little fallen pillar right here so it looks like that it fell down. One thing you might want to consider doing is, because there's just a random pillar there, you might want to consider adding some other pillars onto the side like this so that that way it kind of looks like one fell down while the other ones didn't, right? And then what you might want to consider doing is maybe rotating them at random angles just a pinch so that that way they're not all perfectly straight and it kind of looks like maybe seismic activity or erosion has kind of caused the pillars to kind of fall back and forth, right? So it's kind of helpful to kind of do tricks like this. I might want to consider making these a little bit smaller. I can maybe about that small should be good, like that. And now you have some kind of obstruction in the way. So let's say that you have to move around it, or you have to jump over it, or enemies have to jump over it, and then you can attack them as they're vulnerable in the air. So having some kind of obstruction is very, very helpful to make combat more interesting. And because this one's on the ground and not higher up like the other ones, I'll just bring the brightness down just a little bit like that. So now we have an obstruction in the way, and then we can kind of move our way upward to the next spot here. And so some other details that you might want to add is maybe like a statue. Maybe the statue is like a healing statue, or maybe the statue gives you a clue to helping you learn how to win the encounter at the end of this road, right? So a statue is a great choice. We'll put that in there. Just type in statue. And then we'll go ahead and pick a statue that works well. I'd say if we want it to be like a statue that does healing, then we might want to consider using one with like this up here. In fact, I might want to consider putting the healing statue maybe up here. I don't know. We'll see. So I'll go ahead and put the statue here, and I'll change the saturation so it fits that more of that grayish color. I'm going to place it just right there like this. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just rotate it a little bit. And I'll place it just right there like that. And in fact, we could even put some stairs kind of leading up to it. Actually, no, we won't do that. We'll just place that right there like that. I think that looks okay. And remember that one trick. You can add an object shadow to make it pop out more. So if I want this thing to pop out more, I can add an object shadow, bring the intensity up a little bit, and then just bring the verticality, the vertical offset up a little bit, and that will cause that to pop out more. The only caveat is that it will also add that shadow to the shadow as well. That object shadow will add it to the baked-in shadow, so it will pop out more. And there is a way to resolve that. Remember I said make the entire screen with the FG of the... and there's a reason for that. It's because then I can go in here, and if I want to hide shadows, I can. I'm going to go ahead and turn off merge and stroke. I'm going to bring the opacity. I'm going to go fill, clip mask, and I'm going to bring a blur. And what that will do is it will not blur the actual texture that's on the clipping mask. It will only blur the texture if the texture is an actual select like texture like this, and then it will blur that. But if it's a clipping mask, all it will blur are the edges of the shape. It will not blur the texture itself. So a nice little trick there. Then go over to brush like this. Make sure that it's up a layer. And then all I'll simply do right here is just go like this over the shadow. And then I got to make sure that it's on the right layer as well. We'll bring it up another layer. What layer is this? Layer, okay, let's bring that down. There we go. Layer 0, and then this is on layer 1. And then you see right here, I can hide this. And I totally recommend a blur when you're doing this, so that way it kind of blurs up against, it doesn't create this hard edge against the base of that statue there. I'm also going to add a light source. I want to give the illusion that the shadow, or give this notion that it's a healing statue of some kind. So it would be a good idea to possibly add in maybe a light source on it, maybe a bluish color to kind of represent like this water or healing light. I'll bring this up to layer +5. I could put the light source. Let's go change the hue all the way to 180. That should make it a blue color. I'm also going to change the blend mode to normal, and then kind of place that light source right there like that way. And then I'll do the same light source again, but this time I'll change it to overlay. There we go. And then I'll go ahead and put it real big right here like this. And now we have this nice blue light right here, and that will kind of represent, this is kind of a healing statue of some kind. All right, there we go. I'm going to quickly save at 67 changes, and we'll continue on. There's so much detail that we can add in here to it. I feel like there should be more on the ground beneath the statue. That way it can add more to it. One thing we could do is we could continue adding in our kind of little bit of road texture underneath. That would be kind of helpful. Right there, we have a road texture. The other thing we can do is add in some details along there. Let's go to Fantasy Regional, and then we can look at our options here. We open this up. We can see some options here. We can add bushes, whatever it is. We got to figure out what we want to add here. Let's go ahead and look here. You know, I think what might look good at the base there is maybe like some grass or bushes, or maybe even like this kind of cart right here might work well. Let's actually have it leaning up against here. So one of the big tricks with creating depth as well is to overlap things. So I'm placing this piece right here so that it overlaps the statue. And then I maybe want to add in some other stamps that are also going to overlap, like a crate and a barrel. Let's add a barrel like right here. And then let's add maybe a crate of some kind, like maybe right there. And that way I have some overlap. And then maybe there's some things in the crate for your players to use as well. So I'll bring the brightness down so it kind of matches that darker color. This crate is a bit big. We should make it a little bit smaller. There we go. And that way we have some overlap. Maybe put another one right there to overlap that. There we go. So now you have this nice kind of overlap. You might want to consider maybe adding some kind of stair there as well. Let's go to Fantasy Battle Maps and we'll add that. Where are we at for time? 3:30. We still got tons of time. Great. Let's keep going here. Let's go ahead and add in a stair of some kind. Here, I think I'm just going to use a stamp for this, so I'll probably use this one right here like this, and I'll kind of just have it connected just like right there like that. I'm going to desaturate a little bit. There we go. Bring the brightness down. And then what I'll do is I'll have this overlap that to hide the lack of perspective on the side of that stair. And then put that there like that. And then this can go behind that stair so it looks like there is some kind of dimension there. There we go. In fact, I'll actually switch this to luminosity blend mode and turn the layer shadow off. There we go. Looks a little better. I'd say I need to bring the contrast to kind of match with the shadow or the statue. So artwork a little bit. There we go. We have a little staircase that kind of leads up to that point right there. That looks good. There we go. Let me just go back down and just take a look at everything. I think overall this looks good so far. There we go. Then we want to add some other things as well in here. So we maybe want to consider adding in something up here in this corner right here. Let's go ahead and go into the catalog, go back to Fantasy Regional and look at our options. You know, that negative space, a ruin might look really good right there. That might look good. So let's add this ruin right here maybe. And then we can maybe place it just right into here like this. Let's place it right here like that. Let's also go change the blend mode to luminosity. Let's bump the contrast so it kind of matches those hard contrast lines that exist inside the mountains, and then bring the brightness down a little bit like this to make sure that that mountain piece really kind of fits. Let's flip it this way like this. And then let's go ahead and place it, let's place it right here like this. So it's kind of behind some of the mountain, but sticking out right there like that. So that way you have a little bit of ruins right here. That's something that you might want to explore. Like maybe there's something inside of those ruins that your players are going to explore. If you want to have it to where they can actually explore inside of it without blocking the view, you can easily just go back to that same clipping mask technique, and we're just going to hide this section right here like that. Let's hide this section and then maybe fill in this section right here like that. That looks good. There we go. And then that way players can actually explore inside of that area like that. That looks nice. We'll do a couple things. One thing, we'll add in that kind of road texture in here. And then we'll also add in that cracked ground texture, which should look really good here, right in here. There we go. And now you have, actually, I kind of liked that, I kind of like the darker texture in there, actually. That looked a lot nicer. Let's just keep that. And then I'll go in with the cracked ground here as well. In fact, we'll go back to 100%. There we go. We can really get to see that cracked ground there. And now you really do have some space for your players to go in there and kind of explore that little ruin area before they go into this main area where they might go into combat, okay? All right, let's go and take a step back and just overall just look at where we're at. We started by placing the mountain, by adding a sketch and adding in the mountains and the negative space, which was wherever the road was not. And then we added in some locations, like a camp at the bottom, some kind of obstruction on the road so that way your players can interact with, a healing thing, another thing that your players can interact with right here. And then we lead it up to here with this ruin right here, another thing that your players can kind of interact with. So a lot of cool things that your players can interact with. I'm going to add a little bit more road here as well because I see it's kind of lacking. So I'll bring that opacity down. And then I'm going to just single click some small little sections of the road like this. That way there's like little parts of the road that are still there. Here too, we're at a little part of the road right there. There we go. And we'll add some sections right here for the road. Here, just a little bit of details. That looks good. Okay, yeah, there we go. We got a road that kind of leads up into here. We've got that. Some other textures you might want to consider using that work really well here is we've added some hint of erosion by adding the cracked ground underneath, but where's all the eroded soil, the rock that's fallen down from the erosion, right? So we might want to go into fantasy battle maps and just look up rock and find some rock alpha. This one right here, this rock alpha works fine. We'll desaturate. I'm going to look at the size of it. Let's maybe change the scale so I can get more erosion, like more rock on the ground. And then I want to see what it looks like at 100% color. Let me just place it down real quick and see what it looks like. Yeah, that works. That's okay. That looks okay. We're all right with that. And then we'll just kind of single click and place some along the ledge, and particularly where that cracked ground is. And what this represents is like erosion, because you would kind of expect a little bit of erosion. So we'll go ahead and add that at the base of the mountains. We can even put it in here somewhere along here, and then all along here where the base of the mountain is. There we are. Not necessarily the base of the mountain, but where the base of the apex of the mountain is. So you want to have some kind of erosion. So now you have these kind of nice fallen rocks. That adds a little bit more to it. Let's go ahead and save it at 300 changes. Quite a bit, isn't it? Yep, living on the risky side, Makeswell. All right, we'll save it, and then we'll continue adding more details. We'll add filters, and we'll add some interesting combat elements at the very top there, and then we'll create a scene in the background. So that way there's a, like maybe some islands in the background, some ocean. We'll do all of that stuff, and then I'll show you that blur that I was talking about as well. I'll show you how to make the water blurry. So we'll go over that. Oopsie, for some reason these got moved for some reason. I'm not sure how that happened there. We'll go ahead and move these back down. I must have accidentally selected them all and moved them by accident. That happens. Let me take a look here. Did I move everything down? Yep, I sure did. Oopsie. There we go. A little bit better. My mistake. In fact, I might move this over a little bit. Over to here. There we go. Okay. And let's move this one so that way it's not blocking too much of that path right there. Perfect. There we go. That looks good. Okay. Let's go ahead and continue on here. So some other elements that I like to add in are like barricades, so that players can interact with these barricades that might block a formation of your players if they can't come in and attack on all angles on an enemy. These little barricades or palisades are really make combat more interesting. It funnels your players, like it bottlenecks them. It makes the combat more difficult, but it can also be used as cover. You can also like rip it out of the ground with a barbarian and throw it at the enemies to impale them. So those kind of things are fun to add. So I'll go ahead and just type in Palisade, or I think it's under Orc in the fantasy battle map style. And there are these nice palisade walls right here. If you just flip them like this, what they look like is just an upright palisade. And what I'll do is I'll also create an object shadow underneath of it like this, so it looks like it's got a drop shadow. And then what I can do is I can place these all along the path, and these will act as kind of like a barricade. So I can put one here, 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 maybe one right here as well. You can place a couple of them, like maybe there's another one that goes like right there and right there. And in this way, your players can kind of interact, like as they're walking around, they can interact with this barricade right here. Like maybe there's an enemy hiding behind the barricade and you can't see them, or you can hide behind a barricade. Your players can hide behind the barricade. So these nice little palisades act, again, just as obstructions, just like this pillar right here. It's an obstruction, but it adds another element that your players can interact with during combat. So always nice to kind of place that. And I also find that because much of this is kind of grayscaled out, like a lot of this has been desaturated, brown colors add in a warm tone to the otherwise cold or neutral grayish or a little bit of blue that are in those mountains there. So that you'll get some nice contrast with warms and cools by adding in some wood, which has more of a reddish, brownish, warmer color. Those contrast really well with neutral colors as well as cooler colors like gray or blue, things like that. So contrast really helps to make things pop out. So that's really helpful. So we'll add that on there. And then we want to add in some kind of combat up here. So what we might want to consider doing is maybe making some kind of pit that your players have to either interact with, or maybe there's some kind of fort or something that's up there. What we could do is maybe put like a ruin. Let's go ahead and add in like a summoning circle. One thing I love to do is use summoning circles to kind of represent a more interesting ground, because that way you don't have to like paint in with all these textures. So I can take this summoning circle and just place it right on the ground like this. And a cool little trick to make it more isometric is just to grab the hotbar like this and just transform it like that. And then now we have this nice summoning circle right here. This is going to act as maybe some ruins or a ruined ground. I'm going to change the blend mode to luminosity. That way it picks up the color that's underneath it, so it blends in with the materials beneath it. It kind of pops out too much, so what I can do is bring the opacity down, or bring the contrast down, so that way the line work slowly gets diminished, and then it kind of blends in better with the ground underneath it. I might need to bring the brightness down just a little bit, like that, and I maybe want to have it overlap this piece of the mountain right here, like this, so that way it kind of looks like it pops out more. There we go. And so I have this nice summoning circle ground to work with, and then maybe I can take these same pillars that I was working with, but this time I want to change the blend mode to normal so I don't accidentally get the blue ocean behind it. And then I'll go ahead and take these pillars and I'll have them overlap, and for now I'll have them all facing upward for right now, but I will end up changing them to have some of them be fallen down. So for instance, I can place one down like this, and this will act as something that your players can interact with. And just like I did with the other pillars, just to show erosion, I'll go ahead and have them kind of rotated a little bit, facing in different kind of directions. That way it looks a little bit more interesting, like that. So now we have this kind of ruin right here. Nice little trick that you've got here. But you got some nice ruins. We might want to maybe add in some rubble and debris. It's called a ruin, so let's type in rubble. And I'm going to go to the fantasy battle map style. Right here, I'll grab rubble piles. I'll change that blend mode to luminosity so it picks up the texture underneath it. And remember what I said about, in the past, I've mentioned this. Luminosity picks up the texture color beneath it, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't change the brightness or the contrast. So when you place it down with a luminosity blend mode, know that you will have to change the contrast just a little bit. So I'll change that contrast. I'll bring it down a layer like this, and I need to bring it down a little bit more brightness, and I'll actually bring it down another layer right here like this, and I'll go ahead and place this kind of rubble right here like this. Make sure it doesn't get in the way of the pillar there. Let's add another one of those rubble pieces, maybe right here on this edge, right here like this. That looks good. And then another rubble piece like maybe right here, and then one more rubble piece just like right there like that. And that way it kind of overlaps some of the, there we go, overlaps some of the summoning circle. There we go. So, oops, this one right here. Let's push this up a layer. No, I think we'll get rid of that one. Yep. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a step back and just kind of look at it. I think so far that looks okay. We start here at the bottom. Players make their way up. They've got these obstructions in the way. They're going to move their way up through here, up into here, where the combat is going to take place. I think that looks good. That looks good. Okay, let's also use some cracked ground as well along here, here, and along here, just to kind of match in with where the rubble is. That looks good. Okay. All right. Let's quickly save, and then we'll go on to that last. We'll add in a scene in the background. I'll show you how to do that. Just one moment. We'll let that save. Where are we at for time here? Cool. We still got like 15 minutes. We'll probably will get a lot done with here. Hey, I'm really glad that you're here, by the way, Human Gamma Bomb. Glad that you were able to make it. Okay, so let's do that one little trick in the background, right? What we're going to do is we're going to try to show that there's some landscape in the far background. And so the way that I'm going to do that is pretty easy. We're going to switch over to a different style. Okay, we're going to switch over to Fantasy World because it's already in a scale that it works well for me, right? See the small scale right here? This already works great. I want to have some kind of land in the background over there. So what I'll do is I'll use the add mode of the mask tool. And I'm just going to go ahead and create some land out here in the background with some land right here. Let's also create maybe a little bit of land right here, like a little island. You'll notice that it's got the same color as the FG color texture. That's okay. We're going to change that. So I'll just create a little island over here like this. What I should have done is make a little bit more room up here. I would resize this actually to where it goes higher up right here, so that way you can see more of a scene up here. But I'm not going to resize it because our time is running out. And so instead, what I'll do is I'll just work with what we have here. So I'll go with that right there. Then we'll switch over to a texture. Let's switch over maybe to green to kind of represent some grass. That's a little too bright. Let's maybe go with a darker, more faded out color. Maybe this one right here would work better. Actually, let's go with this one. There we go. That looks better. Let's also bring the brightness down a little bit. Just a hair. There we go. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and add some stamps. So I can choose a mountain. Just to really show that it's far, far away. I'm going to add a mountain that kind of goes onto here like this. Here like that, and then let's maybe add in some mountains here. Let's add one right there along that edge there, maybe some right here. Let's put a big one right there like that, and then put a smaller one like right there like that. So now you kind of have these nice mountains in the background. So, and then let's maybe paint in a little bit of sand along the coastlines. So go on that FG layer. I'm going to use the edgy brush. Let's go with about 2. Let's go with down to 3. Bring the scale down. And then just along this edge, I'll add some sand to kind of show for the beaches here. Add a little bit of sand along here. That looks good. Let's add a little bit of beach right here as well. And then some here as well. And then we'll go ahead and throw in some trees. Tree. There we go. Let's see here. Is it popping up? There we go. Let's go with this green right here. Actually, let's go with this one instead. And I'll go ahead and place these. Put them here in the background, like right here, like this, so I can get a nice kind of scene right here, maybe right here as well. And then we'll put a big one right here. Some individual ones. Some here, maybe going kind of up the mountain right there. Here. Some single clicks. And I'd like to put trees at the base of the mountains to kind of blend in the line work a little better, because the line work kind of pops out a little bit, so the trees kind of hide some of that line work. And a lot of trees, generally forests, are at the base of mountains. Okay, so let's take a step back, and you can kind of see now that there's some scene in the background there. Now you can, and let's talk about if you wanted to make it look like there was atmospheric distortion. You could just select all of the stuff back here in the background here. Let's go ahead and accidentally unselect this stuff, so that way I don't accidentally select it. So there are a couple options here. The first one you can do is just blur it like this. See how you can blur the stamps themselves just to give it some more blur. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't blur the FG layer, right? So you'll notice that there's an inconsistency there. So the way that you would fix this is pretty clear. What I would do if you wanted this to work, I would go over to the shape tool, add mode, go with maybe a brush like this, put it all the way, turn the blur off, and then let's bring it all the way to layer -5. I don't think there's any stamps in -5. Let me make sure. It doesn't look like it. Cool. No stamps are in -5, so I won't accidentally cover anything. And so what I'll do is I'll fill clip mask, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and use that clip mask and fill the entire section like this all the way across. Let me make sure that I got here as well, right there. Okay. Now, what I'll do now is I'll take these big shapes right here, and I'll bring them up to layer, let's say, -3. And then what I can do is go over to this filter right here, and then go over to a blur filter, and then put it all the way down on -5. And then also put all of these stamps, right here need to also be on -5, so that way you can, they'll also blur. So if I bring that down all the way to -5, you'll notice that it blurs that as well. Now, what I would do, though, is I would bring the blur size down so it's not totally blurred like this. Now, this trick works for any kind of battle, any kind of map, because the way that it works is that the FG and the BG layer are going to pick up the blur filter. So that's going to be put you in a disadvantage. So you'll have to use the add mode, or not the add mode, but the fill clipping mask, so that way it can go up a layer above the blur, and that way it won't affect this part of your map right here. So you'll notice that that blur is there, and now you have that nice little blur there. That's helpful. Very, very nice. We'll go ahead and save it real quick. So nice trick. You want to have the blur be down a layer below, like maybe -5, and then all the stamps you want to be blurred with it at -5, and then everything that you want to not be blurred, you'll have to add that fill, a clipping mask fill for a shape tool. No stroke, unless you're adding a stroke of some kind. Make sure that it's a layer above the blur, and then that way you can blur things. Again, this trick works for any kind of map, so very, very helpful. Nice little trick there. Let's go ahead and add in some other filters. So far, everything kind of doesn't really blend well together because there's no filter to kind of blend all the colors. So there's a couple things that we can do here. The first thing that I like to do is to add some kind of color filter. What the color filter will do is it will allow a lot of the stamps to kind of match better. So I can always pick, like, a red sky is always a good choice, since it's a kind of a undead kind of theme to it. We might want to consider adding a night theme to it, or you can add in some kind of overcast, whatever your choice is. We can go with a night scene because I think that works fairly well, but I should use an object filter for that right here, this night filter. We'll bring this up all the way to layer 5 here, like that. Let's actually go down one layer, and then I'll bring all those pillars down a layer. They shouldn't all be up. Let's just select all from the style, select all, go down a layer. There we go. So now those are all up like that. And then this light source, that's up layer 5. Let's copy and paste that light source, and we'll double up and put it right there. Let me make sure that that filter is at the right layer negative, or layer 4. That's good. There we go. We have a light there. Let's also bring these light sources. Let's add in another light source just right on top of that, like that. There we go. Get some nice glow going on there. Let's bring the let's go ahead and bring the night filter down, so opacity down a little bit. There we go. That way it doesn't affect the light source. You see how diminished the light sources are with that multiply night filter on? But if I bring it down like this, the light sources don't get quite as diminished, but it's going to add that dark kind of feel to it that I like. So I'll do that. I also want to add maybe some kind of light source right over here. What I could do is take like a torch. Let's go ahead and add a torch. We'll go with fantasy battle map style. I like to add light sources at certain areas, so I might want to add like one little torch right over here, and then I'll just add some light sources for that torch. Let's bring this torch down to the right layer. My mistake. There we go. And then I'm going to stack my light sources. Cool little trick is you can use multiple light sources. I can use like this orange one right here to give it that nice orange glow right there, and then add in another more yellow color, a big one, on top of that, just to give that some extra glow on top there. Let's add one more, copy and paste. There we go. That way I can get some extra glow right there. Bring the opacity down. There we go. Now you have some nice work there. Let's go ahead and add in a couple more filters just to give it some more feel to it. A couple options you can do. I've noticed that a vignette filter can work really well, depending. Oopsie, not that one. Go back up to vignette. Let's bring the opacity all the way up. The one thing with it is I'm noticing is the vignette is kind of blocking this part up here, and that's okay. I do like to use the vignette because what it does is it kind of encases it a little bit, so that works well. We might want to change the blend mode to like overlay, and overlay will give a nice kind of effect to it, so let's go with that. Let's also maybe add in a couple other filters, like maybe we want to add in some snow to kind of represent like some kind of particles in the air. We can do that. If the aspect ratio makes it too weird, then you can always switch to repeat instead. You can, I don't think actually repeat works with that texture, actually, my mistake. I'm just go over all the filters that we can kind of go over here. There's a couple that you might want to consider using. You can use a spotlight filter as well. Just change the blend mode to overlay. and then just bring the opacity down. You can kind of see what that does is it kind of highlights the road a little bit more. So adding in a spotlight is kind of helpful. It kind of highlights that road a little bit more. I think that looks good. Okay, let's keep going. Add another filter in here. There's a couple more that we could add in here. For instance, we could add in like some eerie clouds or some eerie smoke. Let's see here. This one right here, mist. Maybe this one works. Let me just apply it here. Maybe bring it all the way down. Maybe bringing it up a couple layers. There we go. Now we have like this mist-laden like ground. That adds a little bit more creepiness to it. I kind of like that. That looks good. Nice mist there. It also causes that to pop out a little bit more. I like that. Let's go ahead and add in a couple more details. Like it was an undead theme to it, so let's maybe add in some creepy cracked ground texture that will kind of make it look kind of creepy. So I'll go back into Fantasy Battle Maps and type in lava. Everyone knows I like this texture quite a bit. I'm going to go with kind of a fell color, like maybe green would work. Hill. Let's go with that. Let's also bring the texture scale down so I can kind of see more of it on the road. And then I'll just kind of apply it to the ground like this. We go ahead and apply that. 100% opacity. There we go. And then we get some nice green color there. If you don't like the green, we could go with maybe purple instead because it goes with that purple light with the statue. Maybe that works better. Yeah, I think that looks better. There we go. And we'll add this like purple like texture here. There we go. And then maybe we want to have some kind of pit that leads to the underworld because we did go with undead. So let's go back to Fantasy Regional. We can throw this pit down right there like that. Let's transform it so it kind of matches better right there. Let's move the pillar over to the side. Let's put this one down a little bit. There we go. Let's also change the blend mode to luminosity so that way it's got the same kind of texture. Let's maybe bring the contrast down a little bit. There we go. And then we have this nice pit right here. And then we can have like, maybe that's where the spirits of the undead are kind of coming out and kind of flooding their way down to here. So I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and quickly save it. Where are we at for time? 57, perfect timing. I think overall, you kind of get the general idea on kind of how to put this type of fantasy regional battle map, right? It's pretty easy to put together. You just want to choose your aspect ratio. That's determined whether it's VTT or print. Don't forget, you're definitely going to want to go with the regular portrait or landscape aspect ratios for print, unless you have like a plotter or some kind of printing service that you can go to for more weirder prints. If you're doing VTT, you can go with any aspect ratio that you want. So this one right here is 1:2 aspect ratio, basically 40:80. Okay, and I did that on purpose because I like to have this long aspect ratio so that I can make this nice long windy road. I did that with the path tool for the sketch. And then when I had that sketch, I filled in the negative space. Negative space, what I meant by that is wherever there's not road. And then we framed the road with all of the various mountains here. Then we did that. And then we added in some road texture, and we made it a lighter color so it contrasts against those darker mountains. We added in some cracked ground to blend in the mountains. We added in some rubble rocks alpha texture so that way it would also look like there's erosion. And then we added in a starting point where your players start out with this camp right here. We added in obstructions like pillars and these palisades so that players can interact with things. We added this healing statue so that your players can be healed up before they go into the final encounter with the undead here, as well as some ruins over here that your players can explore and look for clues or some kind of weapon or spell that will help them to defeat the enemies in this final spot here. And then of course we also added in a background right here, and we showed you how to operate the blur filter and to make it work with only blurring out some parts of your map and not all of your map. So what I was kind of thinking is that we would do maybe a fantasy battle map or a fantasy regional battle map stream, a masterclass once every month, because one, these are like my favorite types of maps to make. I love fantasy regional. They're probably a little bit more niche, but They're a lot of fun to make, and you really get to show a little bit more depth when you're making them. And then also, I think since there's so many of them, we're gonna have to just make it a series. So maybe next time we'll make like an ocean ruin or whatever. We can do a vote like we did before, so that way people can kind of pick and choose what kind of things they want to make. When I do make this stream available for YouTube, which will be sometime this evening, I'll be sure to include the link to this map just in case you want to clone and edit it for personal use. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody so much. We got a lot done here. I'm looking forward to Friday stream. So please stay safe and healthy. Merry map making. And I will see you all on Friday. Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye.